Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rapid Robotics headquarters here in San Francisco, California. Welcome to everybody here in the audience. Welcome to everybody joining on the live stream, and especially welcome to the folks in Novi, Michigan at our office there who are also joining us live. My name is Jordan Kretschmer. I'm the CEO of Rapid Robotics. When we started Rapid 3 years ago, we had the vision of creating the first automated workforce in the world that actually works. The labor crisis is getting so bad and getting worse, which is what makes this so important today. To put it into perspective, today only about 2% of manufacturers in the US, of labor in the US is automated with a robot, which puts the US 27th in the world in terms of automation. And for a country with the largest GDP in the world, this is not acceptable. It means that soon we won't be able as a country to make the things that we all take for granted today. And the four main things we hear from customers all the time about why they haven't yet automated are that robotic automation is too complex, it's too expensive, it's not flexible enough, and most importantly, it takes too long to plan and deploy to make the entire thing worth it. And so a lot of times, the reason for that is because there's too much focus placed on trying to automate the most intense or the hardest or most complex things in a facility, when the exact opposite can actually be the most productive path to creating a hybrid workforce. At Rapid, we call this bottoms-up automation or bottoms-up transformation. And today's sessions, all of them are designed to dispel some of those myths that used to be true about automation and to provide guidance on where, how you can execute automation easily in your facilities, quickly, affordably, and most importantly, very reliably and fully supported. So the opportunity finally exists to achieve the outcomes of a more hybrid workforce through solutions that are designed to automate the simple operations in your facilities using modern concepts and strategies like robotics as a service, and by using purpose-built solutions that work seamlessly together. So today, our panelists are going to be talking about a few things. One, the state of the industry today. Two, why the workforce what the future of the workforce looks like in order for the U.S. manufacturing to thrive. And lastly, we're going to be talking about what solutions exist right now to support immediate automation growth in the U.S. So I'm very, very excited about the panels today. You've got some of the best thought leaders and most respected thought leaders in the industry here with us. So please ask questions during the panels, especially those on the live stream, that we can ask in the Q&A sessions at the end of each panel. So now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panel about the state of the industry, moderated by our CMO, Kim Losey.
We ready? All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. When we look at the challenges that our industry is facing, it's really interesting to us that in the traditional mainstream media, we're seeing a lot about the success stories. We're seeing lights out factories and some awesome stuff that's happening. But what I think we're missing is the other 98%, maybe 99% of manufacturers and the reality of the situation. So we wanted to get together with these amazing folks to bring a different perspective to all of you around what is truly the state of automation and the state of the industry. So, Nikki, you bring this amazing perspective from the practitioners, the people in automation on factory floors every day. You're talking to them through your podcast, The Automation Ladies, and also through your work at QuoteBeam. Alex, through A3, you're talking to these people all the time, the state of automation. And then Jeff, through the Manufacturing Leadership Council at the NAM, what's happening on a national level. So we want to dive into that a little bit this morning for the next 30 minutes. Please, everybody, start to put questions in the panel, and we'll address them at the end. All right?
Good.
Ready?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Okay. I want to start with really thinking about the industry trends and challenges. So what do each of you see as the biggest challenges that are facing U.S. manufacturers today? Do you want to, maybe Jeff, from your perspective?
Yeah. So there's myriad challenges out there: supply chain disruptions and workforce shortages and geopolitical unrest and economic uncertainty. But from a digital transformation standpoint, one of the challenges that we see now is transitioning from single projects and pilot projects into scalable enterprise-wide deployment. With that comes other challenges, data. What do you do with all that data that you get? How do you know what's important? How do you use it? How do you translate it for your workforce to actually make it actionable? So there are a lot of challenges, but I think from the digital transformation point of view, like scaling right now is very important for all of us.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Alex, what do
I'll
you
just
think?
add to that, like our member companies now do more in terms of the variety of technologies than they ever have before. So of course, everyone knows robotics and machine vision, but now you have artificial intelligence. You have all of these technologies converging. So it's like, it's such a broad set of options that small all the way up to large manufacturers often are confused with where to go. And so they're looking for solutions, they're looking for partners. And so it can be a confusing environment because there's a lot.
It's tough when the problem seems so big to know where to start, right? It's kind of overwhelming.
So I hear a lot about, manufacturers are busy keeping their production going. And it's very hard oftentimes to pull attention away from keeping production going to meet their targets when you get machines down and maybe there isn't a spare part, the supply chain, it's hard to get. So they have to work around all these problems. They have a lot of legacy equipment that has hardware on it that can be 20, 30 years old that's now obsolete. They're having a hard time, keeping the workforce that does maintenance and upgrades. So just kind of running the daily business is, in many ways, many manufacturers don't have a whole lot of extra room to be doing a lot of strategic initiatives.
Right.
Because right now, especially, consumer demand for a lot of manufactured goods coming from the US is extremely high.
Yeah.
And so, being able to take approaches that are easier to get in, that are more transparent, that maybe are smaller starts, that give more immediate ROI, are things that in the past have been harder to get to. You talk about a lot of big implementations, big projects, strategic initiatives, and every day they bump against, well, I have a deadline.
Right. Yeah. And a workforce to feed and a community to support.
And a lot of open positions to fill constantly.
Yeah, we're going to talk about workforce a lot today. That's going to be a theme that keeps popping up all over the place. It was last night even as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really disheartening in many ways to talk to the executives that we talk to, and they're not. You're right. They're not strategically able to run their business because they're on the shop floor tending the injection mold machines, putting parts in boxes, and it's great that they have that experience, but it's also challenging to balance all of those priorities.
Oh, yeah.
So what about we talk a lot about the misconceptions. There is a lot of great success stories. We don't often see the failure stories or the big challenges that manufacturers do face in thinking about an automation journey. What would you all say are some of the biggest misconceptions that we need to address?
From my perspective, I see kind of one or the other is that people think that factories are already automated as much as they could be. And that's why we've lost so many manufacturing jobs over the last couple decades, is because all these people have been replaced by robots, which if you look at the majority of manufacturing, that's absolutely not the case. And I think we kind of, in popular culture, how much do we see about our manufacturing industry? We see how it's made, which is awesome. Those are a lot of times machines that have been around for decades, and they pump out parts really quickly, and it's cool to see how a balloon is made. What you don't necessarily see is the whole line, and not a lot of automation usually, except for the machine, the high volume machine itself. And then you see cool new stories about a new lights out factory, or how a car is built with just a ton of robots. But those are really, not the majority of what goes on. And there just isn't a whole lot of window into what we do for the general public to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, tremendous amount of opportunity still out there. At Automate, small and medium-sized companies, we have a tremendous amount of new people that come to that show every year. It's not like the same people that come and they're like, oh, what's different this year? And so we see that firsthand when we put on that event. It's like new people, small, medium-sized companies, never touched a robot, never had an AI software running, something like that. Maybe they're just getting started.
Yeah.
You said the average age of equipment. You brought that stat up. That's a really interesting stat. I've seen it. It's a big number now.
Yeah.
So people are really looking at not just how do I replace or repair this unit, but if I'm redoing my facility and I have to reimagine it, and that's where partners like you come in and our members come in, is to help them do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, right now we have 800,000 open positions in manufacturing. That number is going to balloon in the next several years. And one of the misconceptions about manufacturing is that it's dirty and dangerous and for a small subset of people in the world. Just a quick story. Yesterday, I got an email from, my son's a freshman in high school. I got an email from the school that they're doing a career fair for kids who are not going to go to college. And manufacturing is a big focus for that group. And that's great. But like my son's a freshman taking Python coding. That is applicable to manufacturing. He could either use that skill later to design an app to predict when, like a family needs to order pizza, like using AI and Python and stuff, or he could do something that's hands-on and really could change the world and make a huge impact beyond getting that pizza on time there.
Hey, pizza's pretty important.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
Especially to a ninth grader.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But so, I mean, I think there's a missed opportunity and a misconception that manufacturing is for a small subset, but it's for everybody. And we need those voices of everyone, no matter what they are capable of doing.
You use the term manufacturing, and I think that's important. That's a thread that runs throughout everything we're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
From our standpoint, we look at it as automation technology laying across all these industries. So manufacturing is a huge opportunity, and companies within there are on a scale of early to late stage, right? But there's others outside. There's construction, there's agriculture, there's the outside manufacturing opportunities. They're just exploding right now. And so there's a lot of exciting things happening in those areas too. So to your point, it's going to transform manufacturing. It's also going to transform everything else, right? So maybe even the pizza industry a little bit more.
We were talking last night with Andrew and started talking about what's happening in technology and comparing that to what's happening in manufacturing. And he brought up a great point that you'll probably all hear in a little while, but like manufacturing is the new technology. Like there's technology everywhere that makes it really important and able to bring this innovation to the industry that it really needs.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts? Any other misconceptions that you think are important to address?
Robots aren't the enemy. I guess we kind of talked about that. It's not, they're tools. They're 21st century tools.
Yeah, we we'll often go into a conference and look at a sea of people and say, how many of you have a 5-year automation plan? And everybody raises their hand. And then we're like, how many of you started it 5 years ago? And like 90% of the hands are still raised because it is so overwhelming to know where to start.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Some of the narratives around American manufacturing, you started with this, Nikki, that it's already as automated as it needs to be. What's it really like out there as you're visiting customers or hearing from customers or out on the shop floor or people, like you said, coming to automate that are getting automated for the first time? What do you think the truth is of those spaces?
I think there is a ton of low-hanging fruit. So even facilities that are by all standards automated, there are still a lot of processes in those lines, unless you're talking about maybe like really high volume electronics manufacturing or something. Most traditional manufacturing will have, even if they've completed their 5-year automation plan, there's still a lot of smaller tasks in between those things that can still be automated.
Yeah.
And then you've got those that are still very largely manual. They look at labor cost as one of their big inputs, and I think what is kind of missing nowadays, it's not necessarily, okay, when I look at the ROI of automation, how much labor can I save, and that's your ROI. I think that's a very outdated way of looking at it. You have to look at, what is my opportunity cost of not automating? Because I can't increase throughput and quality with just having continually more workers coming in, doing this manual process. And then of course the turnover for these positions is very high, and people feel like, hey, I come in, I do this job for an hour, and I get paid for this hour, and what kind of opportunities are there really for advancement in a more manual, manufacturing operation? It really kind of keeps the company at the same level, right? If you can keep up with production, that's great. That's kind of their treading water. And seeing, there is less real. I guess people don't know as much about the fact that, hey, you can start automating these things one by one, like little Lego blocks, and start building up your capability. You don't have to go from all manual processes to fully automated facility and do that in 5 years.
Yeah.
You can start to automate a part of a person's process so that then their job can be upskilled, or they can do more rather than the same repetitive thing all day, they're going to stick around more. They're going to tell people in their community that it's a better job. You're going to, you know, attract and retain more people. It's really a growth enabler rather than a replacement for labor cost.
Yeah, and on that same note, our members have told us, our volunteers and board members have told us something that I think is going to resonate with Rapid, and certainly with what I've seen. It's about starting smart. It's not about just go start, pick something random and start. Right. Start smart. Pick the right applications. Pick from, talk with the people in the industry and learn where those entry points are for you.
Yeah.
And then get going. Because just a couple stats from A3, 44,000 robots ordered last year in North America. 11%, that's a new record.
Wow.
We are basically on a new frontier now in terms of year-over-year growth and automation.
Yeah.
So if you're a manufacturer, you're a company out there who is maybe just dabbling in these technologies, maybe you're just getting started, or maybe you have a couple cells from 5-10 years ago, there's more to consider, more to explore, more to discover than ever before in our history. We are literally paving the way as we go. And so that's a super exciting time for everyone in this room, for the folks here at Rapid growing this business, but also everyone watching. Like, this is it. This is the new frontier for us, right?
Yeah.
And people have been in the industry a long time. They point at you, Roger. They have a lot of experience. Will tell you, look, we've had these kind of precipices before. We've been up against this. We've seen this.
Yeah.
But now the sentiment I'm hearing from people when I visit is it's actually here. Computing power is here. All the opportunities and the enabling technologies are here.
Yeah.
So
Those barriers are really coming down.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of original research at the Manufacturing Leadership Council, and in our most recent Manufacturing Leadership Journal, we published our Smart Factories survey results. One of the questions in there is about digital maturity, and the good news is from 2022 to 2023, the maturity curve has moved up, but the opportunity for continued growth in this area is huge. Only 5% say they're at a 10. 5% say they're at a 9. Our biggest points are at 5 and 7 on a scale of 1 to 10.
That's interesting.
And so, it's shifting in the right direction. There's growth there, but there's so much opportunity and so much more to get done.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's
And there's ways to do it. I mean, one of the things that we feel really strongly about at Rapid is that robotics as a service is this new business model that really kind of lowers the risk for people. And as you said, like the kind of bottoms up, when you start with that low-hanging fruit, you can dip your toe in the water. Then you start to see success. You start to build the expertise in-house. You start to see your employees who love. We've heard stories of deploying robots, and then the human workers are fighting over who's going to get to work with the robot, because everyone wants to work with someone who is really fast and reliable, shows up every day, and looks cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nikki, you and I were talking about what our industry learns from the consumer industry yesterday, and you're right. It's smart to offer robots as a service because people, as consumers, we're also conditioned for that, right? Like, buy the new iPhone. Well, you do it in an installment plan. You can spend the money right away. This is kind of what we're getting used to. And so we lag behind the consumer industry in a lot of ways, but I think it's smart to start offering these things like robot as a service because it's only going to give the ultimate users more to choose from and more paths to success, right?
Well, and then you start to see really, you talked a little bit about the ROI. You start to see the true potential of the ROI, not just in terms of dollars saved compared to, an hourly rate of a worker, but we've heard stories of customers that are then increasing their throughput by up to 40% because the robot's then pacing the line. And, all of these downstream benefits that you don't necessarily anticipate. So you start to see that kind of success. And then you're able to start taking bigger risks and, biting off a little bit more.
And those companies can produce more, and they can attract more workers, keep their labor force. They can start taking on additional capacity projects that currently a lot of manufacturers have to say no because they're at capacity, and they don't have a very elastic way to just increase that right away.
So one of the things we talked about as we were first preparing for this conversation was really the workforce changes and the stories we're hearing in the media around job cuts, certainly in tech, but also some of the major OEMs. Jeff, you had some, I think, statistics on this.
Yeah.
Like what's really going on?
Yeah, I think first off, every organization is its own unique place, and they have to prioritize where their jobs are going and what they're doing there. So it's tough to generalize, But I think of a company like Boeing where I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was an article that they're laying off 2,000 employees. But when you dug into the article, it was 2,000 employees in finance and HR, but they're adding 10,000 in manufacturing and engineering. And so you see sort of a movement towards a new priority to actually making the stuff to right sizing of the organization. And I think that gets lost a lot in some of these more flashy headlines.
Yeah.
That there is a lot of opportunity, and companies realize it, and they're moving their workforce priorities that direction.
Yeah.
For sure.
What about, so you mentioned sort of the companies, Alex, that are coming to automate, that are looking to automate for the first time. Small companies, medium companies. What do you think, having come to that conference, there's a lot of technology that's there. What would you say, do you have any advice for people that may be coming in May to think about, what questions should you be asking?
Wow, what questions should you
Sorry,
ask?
I know that was
Wow, that's great. No, there's a lot of questions that people could ask. But in terms of what's most important, maybe I'll frame it up a little. What's most important for someone who's coming to automate to meet the people or learn for the first time? I think it's just being open and transparent. Share your stories with the companies that automate, right? Don't hold back. Tell them, be one-to-one on what your issues are that you're up against. What are you struggling with? One of the things we hear all the time from attendees of Automate is they're not there for components. They're not there for one-off services. They're there for solutions. They have a problem. They're looking for a solution, and they find it. And so that's I would say that's my one piece of advice. Is just walk into every booth, shake every hand you can, walk away with a tremendous amount of business cards and follow up to do. And we've all been there. Everybody in this room has been there. But do that. It's a human-to-human industry still. We talk about machines and automation a lot, but this is a relationship-based industry and business. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that's one of the things I love so much about manufacturing is that, one, the outcome is immediate, that, you are making something, but then also the relationships. It is so relationship-based, and I think ultimately everybody wants everybody else to succeed.
Absolutely.
Which is really what we're trying to do. We've got to make American manufacturing succeed. So it's exciting when we see these companies adopting automation, adopting robotics, trying things a little bit differently, and the sometimes expected, but sometimes also unexpected benefits that we see from it.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see a shift a little bit in that we're seeing the power of collaboration when it comes to bringing our industry forward. And so things like not reinventing the wheel every single time. If you've come up with a great robot cell that can palletize certain boxes or can do a certain process, then we can share that knowledge across multiple manufacturers so that not everybody is reinventing that wheel every time.
Yeah.
And our industry has been traditionally pretty siloed. You have regional integrators and regional distributors, and they all sort of work off of these handshakes and who knows who. But if the manufacturers that are coming in, they don't know who knows how to automate this process really well, or who has done this before, the more we share these success stories, or even maybe some of the challenges. Hey, we tried this and it didn't go well. There are a lot of those stories, but you don't hear them much. Of course, who wants to talk about their failures?
Yeah.
But ultimately, we can all learn from each other. And I think new ways of going to market too, especially younger engineers, people coming out of college, they've been ordering on Amazon and watching Netflix, and having to flip through a paper catalog or a PDF and then call someone and wait for a visit. These are not the ways that they want to do business. And they want to see more information up front. They want to see some choices. They want to be able to oftentimes educate themselves, self-service of some of this information, and then be able to find good fit partners that actually can, A, help them automate a process, but B, also maybe do a line walk and look what's upstream and downstream from this, and how can we help you be successful with this in the long run, versus just, okay, let's sell a robot cell that does X, Y, Z.
Yeah. Why do you think that there's been such a lack of transparency in this industry? It seems like it's broken down in a lot of other places, but manufacturing still feels really siloed. I think that's starting to change, but with thoughts,
My personal opinion is that, it kind of scarcity mentality, right? If there's not enough business to go around, I want to protect my IP, I want to protect my relationships, I want to protect the way that I do things if I have an advantage, and if I share that with the world, I somehow devalue my operation or open myself up to competition or something like that. But I think at this point, there's so much work to go around for everybody. And especially with things like supply chain challenges, it really makes a lot more sense to start to work together a little bit more. And there's a shortage of controls engineers. A lot of these people that work in our factories and keep them going and know how to do that are retiring.
Yeah, true.
And in the past, a lot of them thought, well, I'll keep all this knowledge to myself so that I don't lose my job. I want job security, right? I think the past has traumatized a lot of people with plant shutdowns and layoffs.
Yeah.
And so they think, well, as long as they really need me and I don't share that knowledge with someone else, I'm not going to, lose my job. Well, here they've kept their job for their entire career and they're about to retire.
Yeah.
And somebody needs to now know what they've been doing.
Yeah. I've heard some stories of customers that have been able to bring in robots, and when you have that transparency and a partnership, whether it's with a robotics provider or your systems integrator, we're able to go to them and say, hey, look, I actually think this is a job I can bid on. Can this thing be automated? What kind of labor rate could I bid the project at, and can I win that business back from overseas? Because when you take into account shipping and all of those other things and the volatility of the time frames and the urgency of it, that it's a great success story. That stuff's coming back.
I don't think we should be surprised that there's some siloing across the industry from one organization to another, because they're siloing inside organizations.
Yeah.
Maybe it's IT silo and OT silo or whatever it might be. I think we are seeing, at least internally, some of that changing because it has to. On the supply chain side, given the disruptions we've had, you're seeing some more lean thinking around how you do ordering, implementing AI and ML to figure out how you can predict when you're going to need stuff, what's your demand, and using AI to kind of place those orders. But you also see that silo breaking down from OT and IT and how they integrate together to create a full ecosystem for an organization.
I'd just add this one thing. I think from the association standpoint, we are seeing the involvement, the engagement from so many more user companies than we've ever seen before. We mentioned a couple earlier. You brought up Boeing, 3M, just to name a couple, right? They're getting deeply involved in automation, and they're not being too secretive, frankly. They're out there giving talks, they're speaking at our conferences, they're out front leading on a lot of these. And so I think it is kind of a mentality or paradigm shift to where, look, you need this technology as a layer of your foundation now to be globally competitive and move into the future. If you don't, we might as well not even entertain that possibility, because you won't be around, right? So it's these new 21st century tools that everyone's kind of come to the realization. It feels like relatively recently, within the last few years, that's kind of tipped over the edge, and now you're seeing more companies out front doing podcasts, being savvy with their media, showcasing their solutions, sharing them, to your point earlier.
Well, if you want to attract the workforce too, the younger generations, they're used to seeing everything online, and that piques their interest, right? They see these big companies, these big tech companies with brands, right? It's easy to funnel them into these things. They don't see a lot of what we do, and therefore it's not at the top of their mind to, hey, I want to go work for this cool manufacturing company. And I hear this actually quite a bit of, well, we've had this job open for a year and nobody just wants to work. Nobody wants to come apply for our job. And I was like, well, what kind of company culture are you showcasing out there? What are your benefits like? They're like, well, those things don't play into it because they haven't even come in for the interview. Well, like, nowadays people want to know that way before they come into the interview. The reason they're not coming into interview for you is because they either see nothing, or maybe they've got a negative connotation of your company. And your job opening that you posted with HR, just like you used to for the last 20 years, maybe you didn't even update the language.
You got to sell your own company.
It's not attracting these people. They can make the same amount of money working at Starbucks, and everybody knows that. They're
true. You got to sell your company.
Yeah.
Sell it to because the leverage is with the workforce now. We're going to talk about it. There's going to be a panel on it, and we're going to have
coming up
more
next.
coming up. Tease that.
And everywhere from the entry-level factory floor worker to the actual tech that we need these degreed engineers with a lot of expertise, right?
Yeah.
All across the spectrum, it's the same. They have choices, and you got to tell them why they should choose you.
I actually think it's so fun, the amount of time. I mean, I've spent some time training and CNC production and other elements of manufacturing, and I love it. I'm always telling my team, like, I wish I had 12 more hours in the day because I would love to have a second job to do this stuff. And then they're like, Kim, please step away from the
if you're interested, I know a lot of companies who want to talk to you. So yeah.
We'll see how this panel goes, and then maybe I'll be.
There's a lot of those second and third shift open positions for you, Kim.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the kinds of solutions that you think manufacturers need to succeed, or maybe even a little bit about robotics as a service. One of the things we encounter a lot is companies that will say, well, actually, I think I would rather own my robots. It's a very traditional capital expenditure mentality that they have. And you mentioned even the lack of automation engineers that are out there. So if you can find that one or two people, sort of depending on the scale of your business, that's great. But then what happens if they leave you? You're kind of stuck with this, what sometimes turns to be a robot graveyard, which we hate to see.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? So what do you think about like the kinds of solutions they need to succeed, or even your thoughts on robotics as a service, and maybe the pros and cons, or things for people that you see, what are they thinking about it?
Yeah, I think it's still really application based. Depending on what you're trying to achieve. There's some standardization and coalescing around like pick and place, palletizing. These kind of groundswell areas where the technology is being used more and more. But I think it's embracing the potential to use a bunch of different technologies in concert together.
Yep.
Like a lot of people, I think, might think, oh, I need a robot for this to do this one task, when the optimal solution might end up being a mobile robot with a collaborative arm and a vision system and a slightly more investment, or a service, a contract basis that does your job, 10x better than just the robot was that you thought, right?
Right.
So the ability to embrace kind of this, this convergence of technologies would be my observation.
When we talk about automation largely, 30,000 foot view, it gets overwhelming. But robots as a service, that's kind of that old adage, how do you eat an elephant? Like one bite at a time. And that's a good way to get in the door, to start that low-hanging fruit approach towards getting instant ROI on your automation, and start scaling from there.
Yeah. What about one piece of advice that you would give manufacturers, like to stay afloat? It's still challenging. Like we're still dealing with the ramifications of the pandemic and this growing labor shortage.
My personal advice would be stop thinking about ownership and start thinking about relationships and collaborations. Because I think the old model was, okay, we need to own all this capital equipment, we need to hire all of our W-2 workers. A lot of those things are very rigid, right? You have to have this capacity, it's permanent, you maybe buy a fully customized machine or line that can make one thing really well, but it is very hard to be flexible with that kind of capacity. And it can be very hard to hire the talent you need for everything right out of your local community. And I think we live now in this, we've seen it through the pandemic and these changes, right? In other industries, we're seeing a lot more remote work. We're seeing a lot more people that decide they want to do contract because it's flexible for them. They want more work-life balance. And so you don't have to have everything that completely is on your own balance sheet, that's only you, that you're responsible for all the time. I see this here, right, at Rapid, you guys have a number of partners. I see this a lot at Automate. Big companies like Universal Robots, they have a ton of partner companies in their booth, not just them showcasing everything.
Absolutely.
I think we can start to focus a little bit more. Okay, what is my core business? What are my core strengths? And then how can I use my network of collaboration partners to be more resilient, more flexible, and be able to grow faster than having to do it all yourself with your own resources and ownership over absolutely everything, which is where robotics as a service is such a great option, especially for less mature manufacturers that maybe their challenge is, hey, I might be able to use this robot, but what happens if it breaks down? I don't have robotic technicians on staff 24/7. Well, if you have a partner like that, it's less of a risk, and it's an easier way to scale up.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is, when you do digital transformation or automation of any kind, and I've seen this in both software and hardware, I love the bottoms up. start with your people. Because if you bring it top down and you spend 5 years and you finally implement that thing and everybody on your shop floor hates it, they don't want to touch it, they don't want to interact with it, they don't know anything about it, they think it's there to replace them, guess what? That investment will not pay off.
And those are the people who really know the nitty-gritty of what's happening in your production line.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And they're the ones that will tweak it for you from the beginning so that it actually works.
Yeah.
And they want to keep working with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't go it alone. That's a good message. I echo that. Mine would go back to don't rest on your laurels, right? If I'm speaking to someone who's looking to automate or take that journey, don't do what you've always done just because that's the way it's always been done, right? There is very little barrier to entry to join a live stream like this, to go on a website and look up information, to even attend a trade show, meet people. The barrier is very low to at least open up your mind to the possibilities that are out there today, right?
Yeah.
Keep an open mind. Don't just do that one thing or do it that one way or be up against that challenge or that barrier and say, this is it. Throw your hands in there and say, there's no way for me to do it.
Yeah.
So we're getting there and we're seeing the excitement of that. It's really great, these types of events, and everybody in this room is working on it, but that would be my piece of advice. Keep an open mind, get out there and meet people. Don't
takes
go
a
it alone.
village.
Yeah, it takes a village. There you go.
Yeah. Well, and the good thing is the village all wants to help. I think that, everybody's
it's
got
a growing village, too. It's going to be a city pretty soon.
Yeah, there you go.
At MLC, we talk about things in terms of ideas and people, and both of those are equally important. So you have to get started with automation now. Like, if not, you're going to be too far behind, and you're not going to be in existence by 2030.
Yeah.
But to make that successful, you need those people to actually do the work, to actually be involved and empowered to make those changes. So ideas and people. That's my advice.
Okay, all right, ideas.
Both
and people.
important.
Yeah.
I think one of the interesting things is even the very, very large manufacturers that we talk to, when we come in and say, hey, look, well, actually we can automate these repetitive tasks that you're doing. They have dozens, hundreds in some cases of automation engineers, but those people need to be focused on the complicated stuff, right? Not the basic stuff. So I think that's one thing that I would share before we go to Q&A here, is a lot of times we get questions from customers, prospects, and they'll say, I want to automate this thing. And it happens to be the most complicated, operation in their facility. And we're sort of like, yeah, but if it's hard for a human, it's hard for a robot. So actually, why don't you look at these other things that you can do instantly and then work your way toward that more, advanced application.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's go to Q&A.
All right. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
I've been frantically collecting questions from people in the audience. So I'm going to kind of go through these, and everybody just jump in and answer as you see fit. So the first question, what has changed in the last 5 years that makes it easier to actually be able to start automation right now? And let's start with Alex.
Well, I think more options. Robots as a service, if you didn't have the capital before, you couldn't afford it. The ROI equations are much different today than they were even 5 years ago. So I'll offer that one and then maybe kick it to one of you for some additional.
I mean, there's way more technology available, from sensors to the way the cloud works, the way that 5G allows data to flow more quickly. There's so many more options out there to get you to that automation standpoint.
Yeah. Nikki?
I think we're starting to see some of the high-tech and consumer technology also finally bleed into the manufacturing industry. So for instance, I work in my role at QuoteBeam. We're a marketplace for industrial automation components. The last 20, 30 years, people basically, bought and sold these systems and components the same way. They would go to a local distributor and ask for a quote, and it's a bit of a game of telephone between everybody involved, and it takes a few weeks to get a bill of materials together. Well, now we have secure file sharing, and we can use online marketplaces and things like that they can really accelerate kind of everybody working together and getting more done faster. So new business models, new ways of coming to market, and new technologies that are making it more flexible to have multiple different types of technologies in your plant even working together.
Okay, interoperability between the different systems. I think as we see, one of the things that we see at Rapid, the more companies that are creating software-based, sort of software-powered hardware solutions connected to the cloud, the ability to connect these devices together really seamlessly to create a really productive, work cell very, very quickly, I think is a huge part of that.
Yeah, connectivity is huge.
Connectivity, cloud data, right? Being able to connect via APIs very easily. Robotic arm companies opening up their systems with APIs and SDKs that enable us to work more productively with other components, all of that.
And then once you have all that data, how you're able to analyze it with AI and other systems that can actually help you make sense of what you got.
To get insights.
Yeah.
Like, what do I
Yeah.
actually
Quickly.
do with this information?
Quickly,
Yeah.
so it's
Instantaneously.
Yeah, exactly, instantaneous.
And the cloud connectivity, being able to provide support. So robotics as a service, and even other cloud-connected machines, you can find out what's wrong before it even happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Or if something does go wrong and you need to then be reactive, you know what's happened instantly and can sometimes fix it, within 30 minutes. So your line's not down.
I had to test my garage door opener from here to make sure we didn't lose power at home. Tell my wife this morning, same thing. Consumer side on my app, same thing.
Yeah.
Availability of checking from anywhere, looking at your orders, being able to diagnose problems.
Yeah.
So-
Being able to order spare parts, I mean, all of these things are huge, and it's, I think, surprising to most people outside the industry that we haven't had that
Yeah.
until now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so funny how the world of software and like enterprise software for corporate enterprise has gone so far in terms of giving visibility and transparency and ease of use, where in the industrial sector, until very recently, it's just been everything complicated, right? So okay, going to the second question. Which industries have increased automation deployment the most in the last year, and what do you think are the drivers of that? So whoever
Let
wants
one
to
of those
jump
guys
in.
take that.
From our perspective, from what the data we collect show, non-automotive industries have really exploded. These are electronics, semiconductor, plastics and rubber. I know we have Troy right there, plastics and rubber. We have metals. You're talking about warehousing and logistics. All of these non-automotive industries over the past 3 to 5 years have exploded relatively to automotive. Now, last year, the question there said last year. Last year in North America, automotive actually had a resurgence. So we saw a little bit of a cooling in the non-automotive space because everyone's trying to implement from what they ordered 2 years previous.
Yeah.
And automotive really took off last year.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Second it.
So I'll add one to it, which is medical devices.
Yeah.
We see a ton of medical devices, and a lot of that, I think, has to do with the fact that the FDA regulates these devices. So a lot of those small components that you could produce inexpensively out of country, right? One, with supply chain volatility and that little red top for your, vial that you need for your medical device is stuck, in the Suez Canal. Then all of a sudden you can't produce that medical device for, a long time until it gets back. And so we're seeing, I think the medical device industry has been one that we've seen come really strong into, wanting to automate to protect themselves against that kind of volatility as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a question that I'm going to take the answer to the first one here. So this question is: customer success professionals are great at connecting the dots for new automation clients. Do you think that CSMs, customer success folks, will be part of the RaaS model as much as we typically think of them as being more of a SaaS role? And so for those in the audience, RaaS versus SaaS. SaaS is software as a service. It's been around since Salesforce came across and said no software, it's all in the cloud. And there's, I think, a big distinction that's misunderstood between SaaS and RaaS. RaaS is touching the physical world, right? Robotics as a service is not just software as a service. We're interfacing with reality, right? With the reality of the restrictions in that workspace. We're reacting with the tolerances of that part that needs to be produced, right? And so from our perspective as Rapid, and then I'll toss it to you folks, customer success is absolutely vital to everything that we do in terms of building trust in the industry and in the market with robotics and technology companies. When we started Rapid a little over 3 years ago, we found a severe lack of trust with robotics companies, with systems integrators, and especially like with Silicon Valley technology companies. There's been so much over-promising and under-delivering, I think, over the last 10 years or so, and so many false starts and attempts to get something done and then failing, right? That lack of trust creates that fear of failure, right, that you were mentioning earlier, Nikki.
Yep.
And that fear of failure is something that customer success, I think, is something from the SaaS, the software as a service model, that has to be carried over into RaaS. And I don't think you're truly a robotics as a service company unless you have account management and customer success and support 24/7 and those things, supporting and making sure that all of the robots that are out there are doing what they're supposed to do. So that's my take. I don't know if anybody has any addition to that.
I think you're in a good spot to have a take on that based on what we saw yesterday. Yeah. I would just say from an industry perspective, with all the stuff we've been talking about, it's a lot harder to overpromise given what the technology can do, but you can still underdeliver, right? The risks of underdelivering are still there. And so your emphasis on customer satisfaction and support and what people expect, I think, are just going to be at a premium as we go. Because people are going to come in thinking, oh, I saw this, or I want to do this. And yeah, technically you can, but you got to make sure that it's supported.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Also, do we have time for one more question, or is that it?
I think that's it. Why don't we keep the questions going online. We'll answer them throughout the day through, I'm not even sure, LinkedIn, Twitter, and through a blog. We'll get all of that stuff out to all of you. I want to make sure that we give the Workforce of the Future panel plenty of time.
Yeah, so everybody, thank you so much for being here on this first panel. It was awesome.
Thanks for having
us.
Thank you.
And so I think you guys dismount,
Okay.
and then